Hello, good afternoon. In the last hour, the Prime Minister has insisted that Britain would not hesitate to act again to protect cargo ships in the Red Sea if they come under attack. Rishi Sunak will make a statement in the Commons this afternoon to explain to MPs the decision to launch airstrikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen at the end of last week. Earlier today, the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, said the UK had sent a clear warning to the Houthis and that enough was enough. Speaking in the last hour, Rishi Sunak said the warnings to the Houthis were clear.
Right that we took proportionate, targeted action against military targets to send a strong message that that behaviour is unacceptable. It was a last resort. It came after the end of exhaustive diplomatic activity, including a UN Security Council resolution, and now I think it's incumbent on the Houthis to recognise the international condemnation for what they're doing and desist. But we, of course, will not hesitate to protect our security where required.
Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer backed the government's decisions but questioned the process if there were to be future action in the region.
The action that the government took in conjunction with the US is action that we support. What we now need to hear from the Prime Minister is the scope, the basis, the full reasoning behind the decision that he took, and of course the question of whether more action may be needed and what processes will be put in place. So that statement should be this afternoon. I'd be expecting the Prime Minister to answer those questions.
Those are the questions that Keir Starmer wants. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen was at that event with Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, a little earlier and joins us now. So, Tamara, certainly not ruling out the possibility of there being further action there.
That's right. Grant Shapps, the new Defence Secretary, he was giving one of his first major speeches to the Chief of Defence Staff and a whole audience full of top brass and military experts, was asked a lot of questions about these airstrikes carried out last week. He said that it was intended as a single act, these strikes on around 60 Houthi targets, but he said we would monitor the situation as to whether there might be further strikes in the coming days or weeks. He said that for Britain it was a point of principle that global navigation routes must be kept free. We know that there have been at least 26 ships attacked by these rebels since November, some of them quite big attacks on their crew and on their cargo, and we've seen some of the world's biggest shipping companies having to divert their routes away from the Red Sea at huge cost to themselves and ultimately to consumers. So he said it was a point of principle, and he pointed out that the Houthi rebels and he said their backers in Iran had been warned that this would come. This is what he said.
The world sent a very clear message to the Iranian-backed Houthis. End your illegal and unjustified actions. Stop risking innocent lives. Cease threatening the global economy. We could not have been clearer with our warnings, which they chose to ignore, and enough was enough.
Now, we'll hear more from Rishi Sunak. He will be speaking to MPs for the first time since those airstrikes became public late on Thursday night into Friday morning. Of course, he went to Ukraine just after they were announced, and he will be taking questions from MPs. He's expected to say it was a last resort and intended to restore stability in the region, and he'll no doubt face questions about whether that is indeed the case. But across the Conservative Party and much of the Labour Party, there is support for this action. I asked Grant Shapps at his speech whether the UK was disappointed that some other European countries had not joined in the action taken by Britain and the US and had not signed the statement by several other countries supporting it. He said that we shouldn't read too much into that of the counterparts he had spoken to, none, he said, had done anything but congratulate us on our action. And he said the action against the Houthis, along with the new aid to Ukraine, was a sign of Britain leading in the world. But I think talking to some of the people in the audience, there was concern that having set out this picture of a much more dangerous world with lots of non-state actors like the Houthi rebels and other groups backed by Iran, he did not make any new announcements on either troops or military hardware here in the UK.
OK, Tamara, thanks very much.